Lord, I come before you with a mind that races like 1,000 wild horses, thoughts spiraling and tangling like thorns in my consciousness. You know how anxiety has taken residence in my thinking, how it whispers lies in the quiet moments and shouts fears in the chaos. My mind feels like a battlefield where peace seems like a distant memory, where calm is a foreign concept I can barely grasp. I'm tired of this mental exhaustion, this constant state of alert that steals my joy and clouds my judgment. You see how I wake at 3 a.m. with my heart pounding, my thoughts already racing through worst-case scenarios. You understand how I replay conversations, analyzing every word, every gesture, convinced I've done something wrong. I need your healing touch on my anxious mind, your peace that surpasses all understanding to guard my heart and thoughts. Today, I'm laying down this burden at your feet, trusting you to restore what anxiety has stolen. God, you know the weight of living with a mind that won't stop churning, that creates problems where none exist. It's like being trapped in a maze of my own making, where every turn leads to another worry, another fear. I think of all the moments I've missed because I was too caught up in my head, too consumed by what-ifs to enjoy what is. You see how I've become a prisoner to my own thoughts, how anxiety has built walls around my mind that feel impossible to scale. The simple act of making decisions has become overwhelming, as if every choice carries the weight of eternity. I second-guess myself constantly, wondering if I'm good enough, smart enough, strong enough to handle what life throws at me. But you remind me that I don't have to be enough on my own, that your strength is made perfect in my weakness. Help me remember that you are the God who calms storms, both in nature and in the human heart. Lord, I'm bringing you the specific ways anxiety manifests in my mind, the obsessive thoughts that loop endlessly, the catastrophic thinking that always assumes the worst. You know how I lie awake rehearsing conversations that may never happen, preparing for disasters that exist only in my imagination. My mind has become like a broken record, playing the same fears over and over until they feel more real than reality itself. I watch others who seem so calm and collected, and I wonder why my mind can't find that same peace. The comparison only adds to my anxiety, creating a vicious cycle of self-doubt and worry. But you don't compare me to others. You see me as your unique creation, fearfully and wonderfully made despite my struggles. Teach me to see myself through your eyes, to understand that my worth isn't determined by how well I manage my thoughts. Show me that healing is possible, that this anxious mind can be transformed by your renewing power. Jesus, I think about how you slept peacefully in the boat while the storm raged, how you had such complete trust in the Father's care. Meanwhile, I can't sleep through the smallest concerns, my mind amplifying every worry until it becomes a crisis. You understand human anxiety because you experienced it in the garden, sweating drops of blood as you faced the cross. Yet you surrendered to God's will, showing me that anxiety doesn't have to control my choices or define my life. I want that kind of surrender, that ability to release control and trust in your perfect plan. My anxious thoughts have become like unwelcome visitors who've overstayed their welcome, setting up permanent residence in my mind. But you have the authority to evict these intruders, to cleanse my mind of their toxic presence. I'm asking you to do what I cannot do on my own, to heal the broken patterns of thinking that keep me trapped in cycles of worry. God, you know the physical toll this mental anxiety takes on my body. The tension headaches, the tight shoulders, the churning stomach. My anxious mind doesn't just affect my thoughts. It impacts every aspect of my being, leaving me exhausted and depleted. I've tried so many things to find relief, meditation apps, self-help books, positive thinking techniques, but nothing addresses the root of the problem. Only you can reach into the depths of my mind and bring true healing, true transformation from the inside out. I think of how you restored people throughout Scripture, how you didn't just treat symptoms but brought complete wholeness. That's what I need. Not just temporary relief but lasting healing that addresses the core of my anxious thinking. Help me to be patient with the process, understanding that healing minds takes time and consistent surrender to your care. Remind me that you're not frustrated by my struggles, that you're a compassionate God who understands the complexity of human minds. Lord, I confess that I've often tried to hide my anxiety, putting on a brave face while my mind races with worry. Social media shows everyone's highlight reels while I'm drowning in my behind-the-scenes struggles, making me feel even more isolated. You see past the masks I wear, past the "I'm fine" responses I give when people ask how I'm doing. You know the truth, that my mind feels like a prison sometimes, trapped by thoughts I can't seem to control. I've been ashamed of my anxiety, as if having a struggling mind makes me less of a Christian, less faithful, less worthy of your love. But you remind me that your love isn't based on my mental state, that you don't love me less when my thoughts are chaotic. Help me to be honest about my struggles, to find safe people who understand what it's like to battle an anxious mind. Show me that vulnerability isn't weakness but courage, that sharing my story might help others feel less alone in their own mental battles. Jesus, I need you to rewire my thought patterns, to help me take every anxious thought captive and make it obedient to you. My mind has developed such ingrained habits of worry that it feels like my default setting is anxiety mode. You know how I catastrophize, turning molehills into mountains, creating elaborate worst-case scenarios that rarely come to pass. I've become an expert at borrowing tomorrow's troubles, living in future fears rather than present grace. But you tell me not to worry about tomorrow, that each day has enough trouble of its own without adding imagined problems. Teach me to live in the present moment, to find you in the here and now rather than the fearful there and then. Help me distinguish between legitimate concerns that need action and anxious thoughts that only steal my peace. I want to learn the difference between planning and panicking, between being prepared and being paralyzed by fear. God, I bring you the specific triggers that send my mind spiraling, the news headlines that fuel my fears, the social situations that activate my anxiety. You know how certain environments or conversations can flip a switch in my brain, sending me from calm to chaos in seconds. I've become hypervigilant, always scanning for potential threats, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. This constant state of alert is exhausting, Lord, and I don't know how to turn it off on my own. My mind has been programmed by past experiences, by traumas and disappointments that taught me the world isn't safe. But you want to reprogram my thinking, to replace fear-based thoughts with truth-based understanding of your protection and care. Help me to identify these triggers without being controlled by them, to prepare for challenging situations without being paralyzed by anticipation. Show me practical ways to manage my anxious thoughts while trusting you for the deeper healing work only you can do. Lord, I think about all the energy I've wasted on anxiety, all the mental resources devoted to worrying about things that never happened. If I could harness that energy for good, imagine what I could accomplish for your kingdom, what joy I could experience in daily life. My anxious mind has robbed me of so much: peaceful moments with family, restful nights of sleep, the ability to fully engage in the present. You see how I'm physically present but mentally elsewhere, always thinking 10 steps ahead, always preparing for potential problems. This divided attention keeps me from fully experiencing the blessings you've placed in my life right now. I want to be wholly present, to have an undivided mind that can focus on what matters most without being hijacked by anxiety. Teach me to redirect my mental energy toward gratitude, toward recognizing your faithfulness in past situations as evidence of your reliability in future ones. Help me see that an anxious mind isn't my permanent condition but a temporary struggle you're actively working to heal. Jesus, I need you to be Lord over my thought life, to establish your kingdom rule in the territory of my mind. Right now, anxiety feels like it's winning, like it has more power over my thoughts than your truth does. But I know that's a lie, that you have all authority in heaven and on earth, including authority over anxious minds. I'm tired of anxiety bullying me, of feeling helpless against its relentless attacks on my peace. You conquered death itself, so surely you can conquer the death grip anxiety has on my thinking. I want your thoughts to become my thoughts, your peace to become my default state rather than this constant worry. Help me to meditate on whatever is true, noble, right, pure, lovely, and admirable, even when my mind wants to fixate on the negative. Show me how to build new neural pathways based on your truth rather than my fears. Remind me that transformation is possible, that minds can be renewed, that your healing power extends to every part of my being. God, I bring you the lies anxiety tells me, that I'm not capable, that disaster is always imminent, that I can't trust your goodness. These lies have played on repeat for so long that they've started to feel like truth, shaping how I see myself and the world. You know how anxiety distorts reality, making small problems seem insurmountable and painting the future in shades of catastrophe. I've believed these distortions, Lord, letting them influence my decisions and steal my confidence in your promises. But you are the God of truth, and your truth has the power to demolish every lie anxiety has built in my mind. Help me to identify these lies quickly, to counter them with your word before they take root and grow. I need your truth to be louder than anxiety's whispers, your promises to be more real than my fears. Teach me to filter every thought through the lens of your character, to test every anxious assumption against what I know to be true about you. Lord, I'm learning that healing an anxious mind isn't just about removing negative thoughts but filling that space with your truth and peace. Nature abhors a vacuum, and so does the mind. If I don't actively fill it with good things, anxiety will rush back in. You've shown me that I need to be intentional about what I allow into my thought life, what voices I listen to, what influences I permit. For those seeking additional support in this journey, there's a valuable ebook called Don't Think, Trust and Surrender, available in our pinned comment that offers practical steps for managing anxiety symptoms. Remember, this resource complements but doesn't replace professional help when needed. I want to be a good steward of my mind, protecting it from unnecessary triggers while building its resilience through your word and presence. Help me create mental boundaries, to say no to inputs that fuel anxiety and yes to practices that promote peace. Show me how to curate my mental environment just as carefully as I would my physical space. Jesus, I need you to heal the root causes of my anxiety, not just manage the symptoms that manifest in my daily life. You know the experiences that first taught my mind to be anxious, the moments when fear became my teacher instead of faith. Maybe it was childhood instability, past traumas, or learned patterns from anxious family members who modeled worry as normal. Whatever the source, you can reach back through time and bring healing to those original wounds that still influence my thinking today. I don't want to just cope with anxiety. I want to be genuinely free from its grip on my mind. You're the great physician who specializes in impossible cases, who brings healing to hearts and minds others have given up on. Touch those deep places in my psyche where anxiety first took root, and pull out those roots completely so they can't keep producing anxious fruit. Help me to forgive those who may have contributed to my anxious patterns, releasing bitterness that only compounds my mental struggles. God, I think about how anxiety has affected my relationships, how it's made me difficult to be around sometimes, quick to assume the worst about others' intentions. You see how I've projected my fears onto people who only wanted to love me, how I've created conflicts where none needed to exist. My anxious mind has built walls between me and others, making true intimacy feel too risky, too vulnerable to attempt. I've pushed people away with my constant need for reassurance, exhausting friends and family with my repetitive worries and what-if scenarios. But you designed me for connection, for relationships that reflect your own communal nature as Father, Son, and Spirit. Help me to see how healing my anxious mind will improve every relationship in my life, creating space for deeper connections and more authentic interactions. Show me how to communicate my struggles without making others responsible for managing my anxiety. Teach me to receive love without suspicion, to trust without constant verification, to rest in relationships without anxiously analyzing every interaction. Lord, I want to talk about the spiritual warfare aspect of an anxious mind, how the enemy uses worry as a weapon to keep me from fulfilling my purpose. You've shown me that anxiety isn't just a psychological issue but often a spiritual battle for control of my thoughts and ultimately my life. The enemy knows that an anxious mind is a distracted mind, unable to focus on your calling or step out in faith when you lead. I've let anxiety become a stronghold, a fortified place where the enemy launches attacks on my peace and purpose. But you've given me weapons that are mighty for pulling down strongholds, tools for taking every thought captive and making it obedient to Christ. Help me to recognize when anxiety is being used as a spiritual attack, to respond with prayer and your word rather than just trying harder to not worry. Teach me to put on the full armor of God daily, especially the helmet of salvation that protects my mind from enemy assaults. Jesus, I need practical strategies for the daily battle with anxious thoughts. Tools I can use when my mind starts spiraling out of control. You know I can't just pray once and have permanent victory. This is a daily surrender, a moment-by-moment choice to trust you over my fears. Give me simple techniques I can use anywhere. Breath prayers that calm my nervous system, scripture verses I can repeat when anxiety rises, physical movements that help discharge nervous energy. Show me how to create a toolbox of resources for different situations, understanding that what works at home might not work in public settings. I need anchors for my mind, fixed points of truth I can return to when everything feels chaotic and uncertain. Help me to be patient with myself on bad days, remembering that healing isn't always linear and setbacks don't mean I'm failing. Teach me to celebrate small victories, like choosing trust over worry even for a few minutes, recognizing these as steps toward complete healing. God, I bring you my fears about the future, the anxious thoughts about what tomorrow might bring and whether I'll be able to handle it. My mind constantly runs scenarios, trying to prepare for every possible outcome, as if worrying enough could somehow prevent bad things from happening. You see how I've confused anxiety with preparedness, thinking that if I worry enough, I'll be ready for whatever comes. But this hypervigilance is exhausting, Lord, and it's stealing my ability to enjoy today while trying to control tomorrow. You hold the future in your hands, knowing every detail of what's to come and promising to give me grace for each day as it arrives. Help me to trust your timing, to believe that you won't give me tomorrow's challenges with only today's strength. I want to live with open hands, releasing my death grip on control and receiving whatever you have for me with faith instead of fear. Lord, I think about how anxiety has robbed me of joy, how it's cast a shadow over even the brightest moments of my life. You know how I struggle to celebrate good news because I'm already worried about when it might end or what might go wrong. My anxious mind has become like a thief, stealing the gifts you've given before I can fully unwrap and enjoy them. I watch others who seem to navigate life with such ease, who can receive blessings without immediately catastrophizing about their loss. But you remind me that everyone has hidden struggles, that the calmest exterior might hide the most anxious mind. Help me to stop comparing my insides to others' outsides, to focus on my own healing journey without measuring it against anyone else's progress. Teach me to receive joy without suspicion, to embrace good moments without waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to learn to celebrate without qualification, to say, this is good without adding, but what if? Jesus, I need you to heal my relationship with uncertainty, to help me make peace with the fact that I can't control or predict everything. My anxious mind craves certainty like a drug, always seeking guarantees in a world that offers very few. You know how I've exhausted myself trying to eliminate all uncertainty from my life, how I've made myself sick with the effort of controlling the uncontrollable. But you never promised me certainty about earthly things. You promised me your presence through whatever comes. Help me to find security in your unchanging nature, rather than in circumstances that are always shifting. Teach me that uncertainty isn't the enemy. It's the canvas on which you paint your faithfulness and provision. I want to learn to dance with uncertainty rather than fight it, to see it as an opportunity for faith rather than a threat to my peace. Show me that an uncertain future with you is infinitely better than a certain future without you. God, I bring you the exhaustion that comes with an anxious mind, the bone-deep weariness from constantly being on high alert. You see how anxiety drains my energy faster than any physical activity, how I can wake up tired from fighting battles in my sleep. My mind never truly rests, always processing, always preparing, always protecting against perceived threats that may never materialize. This mental hyperactivity has left me depleted, Lord, with barely enough energy for basic daily tasks, let alone pursuing dreams or serving others. You promised rest for the weary and burdened, but my anxious mind doesn't know how to receive that rest, how to truly let down its guard. Teach me the art of mental rest, of giving my thoughts a Sabbath where they can cease from their anxious labor. Help me to trust that you're watching over me even when I'm not vigilantly monitoring every potential threat. Show me that rest isn't irresponsible but an act of faith, declaring that you're God and I'm not. Lord, I want to address how anxiety has affected my faith, how it's made me question your goodness when my mind won't stop racing with fears. You know the guilt I've felt, wondering if real Christians struggle with anxiety, or if my worried mind means I don't trust you enough. I've heard well-meaning people quote verses about not being anxious, making me feel like a failure for not being able to simply switch off my worry. But you see that my anxiety doesn't negate my faith. Rather, my continuing to seek you in the midst of mental turmoil demonstrates a persistent belief in your power to heal. Help me to understand that faith and anxiety can coexist, that I can trust you while still struggling with worried thoughts, that healing is a process, not a one-time event. Show me that you're not disappointed in my anxious mind but compassionate toward my struggle. Teach me to see my journey toward mental healing as part of my sanctification, another area where you're making me more like Christ. Jesus, I need you to help me distinguish between healthy concern and unhealthy anxiety, to develop discernment about when my mind is helping versus hurting me. You gave me the ability to think ahead and consider consequences for good reasons, but anxiety has hijacked this gift and turned it into a curse. I've lost the ability to tell the difference between wisdom and worry, between planning and panicking, between caution and catastrophizing. You exemplified perfect balance, concerned enough about humanity to die for us but peaceful enough to sleep through storms. Help me find that balance in my own life, to care without being consumed, to plan without being paralyzed. Show me when my thoughts are serving me versus enslaving me, when they're based in reality versus rooted in fear. Teach me to use my mind as the powerful tool you created it to be rather than letting it use me. I want to reclaim the gift of forethought without the curse of excessive worry. God, I think about the generations affected by anxiety in my family line, the inherited patterns of worry that have been passed down like unwanted heirlooms. You see how anxiety has been normalized in my family, how worry was modeled as the way to show love and concern for others. I learned early that anticipating problems was responsible, that constant vigilance was caring, that peace was almost selfish in a world full of potential dangers. But you're showing me that I can break these generational patterns, that my healing can impact not just me but my children and their children. Help me to be the generation where anxiety's chain is broken, where new patterns of peace and trust are established for those who come after me. I don't want to pass on this legacy of fear, Lord. I want to model what it looks like to face life with faith instead of anxiety. Give me courage to do the hard work of healing so that future generations can start from a healthier place. Lord, I bring you the specific ways anxiety manifests in my body, the racing heart, the shortness of breath, the trembling hands that betray my inner turmoil. You designed my body to respond to real threats, but anxiety has hijacked the system, making me react to imagined dangers as if they were charging lions. My body doesn't know the difference between a real threat and an anxious thought, so it prepares for battle even when I'm safe in my bed. This physical response reinforces my mental anxiety, creating a feedback loop that feels impossible to break without your intervention. Help me to learn techniques for calming my body, understanding that as my physical system relaxes, my mind often follows suit. Show me how to be gentle with my body when it's responding to anxiety, not getting frustrated but compassionately helping it return to baseline. Teach me that healing my anxious mind includes caring for the body that houses it, that physical and mental health are intimately connected in your design. Jesus, I need to talk about the isolation anxiety creates, how it makes me withdraw from the very connections that could help me heal. You know how I've canceled plans because my anxiety was too high, how I've avoided situations where I might be triggered or exposed. My anxious mind has convinced me that isolation is safer than connection, that if I just stay in my comfort zone, I can avoid the discomfort of worry. But this self-protection has become a prison, Lord, shrinking my world smaller and smaller in an attempt to control my anxiety. You created me for community, for relationships that challenge and support me, for connections that remind me I'm not alone in my struggles. Help me to push past the isolation anxiety creates, to reach out even when my mind tells me to retreat. Show me safe people who understand mental health struggles, who won't judge my anxiety but will walk alongside me toward healing. Teach me that vulnerability in community can be a pathway to healing, that sharing my struggles lessens their power over me. God, I want to acknowledge the times I've turned to unhealthy coping mechanisms to quiet my anxious mind. The endless scrolling, the compulsive behaviors, the numbing agents that promised relief but delivered bondage. You see how desperate I've been for peace, how I've searched for it in all the wrong places when anxiety felt unbearable. These temporary escapes have only compounded my problems, adding shame and additional struggles to my already burdened mind. But you offer genuine peace, lasting healing that doesn't come with negative side effects or mourning after regret. Help me to turn to you first when anxiety rises, to reach for your word instead of my phone, to seek your presence instead of artificial comfort. Show me healthy coping strategies that honor you and promote true healing rather than just masking symptoms. I want to be free not just from anxiety but from the unhealthy patterns I've developed in trying to manage it on my own. Teach me that your peace is always available, always sufficient, always better than any substitute I might seek. Lord, I think about the dreams and opportunities I've missed because anxiety held me back, the chances I didn't take because my mind convinced me I'd fail. You know the weight of regret I carry, wondering what my life might look like if fear hadn't been in the driver's seat for so long. My anxious mind has been like a harsh critic, talking me out of risks that might have led to beautiful experiences and growth. I've played it safe so many times, choosing the familiar discomfort of anxiety over the uncertain possibility of something better. But you're the God of new beginnings, of second chances, of redemption that makes all things new. Help me to believe it's not too late, that healing my anxious mind can still open doors I thought were permanently closed. Show me that every day I choose faith over fear is a victory worth celebrating. I want to live the rest of my life making decisions from a place of peace rather than panic, stepping into opportunities with confidence in your guidance rather than anxiety about potential failure. Jesus, I need you to heal my relationship with time, the way anxiety makes me live everywhere but the present moment. My mind is constantly time traveling, reliving past mistakes and previewing future disasters while missing the gift of now. You know how I've robbed myself of countless present moments by being mentally elsewhere, physically here but emotionally in next week or last year. This temporal displacement has kept me from experiencing the fullness of life as it happens, always preparing or processing but never simply being. You lived fully present during your time on Earth, engaged with the people and situations right in front of you without anxiety about tomorrow. Help me to anchor myself in the present, to find you in this moment rather than searching for you in fearful futures or regretful pasts. Teach me that anxiety loses much of its power when I stay grounded in the now, when I deal with actual rather than potential realities. I want to live with presence of mind, fully engaged with the life you've given me today. God, I bring you my fear of the healing process itself, the anxiety I feel about confronting the roots of my anxious mind. You see how I've become comfortable with my dysfunction, how anxiety feels familiar even as it torments me, how the thought of changing creates its own set of worries. What if I try to heal and fail? What if I'm too broken? What if anxiety is just part of who I am and I have to learn to live with it? These questions swirl in my mind, creating anxiety about overcoming anxiety, a meta-worry that feels almost absurd but is painfully real. You understand human nature's tendency to cling to the familiar even when it hurts, to choose known pain over unknown possibilities. Help me to be brave enough to pursue healing even when it feels scary, to trust that you'll be with me through every step of the journey. Show me that the discomfort of growth is temporary but the freedom from anxiety can be lasting. Give me courage to face whatever needs facing, knowing you'll never leave me to do this work alone. Lord, I want to thank you for the strength it's taken to survive with an anxious mind this long, for the resilience you've built in me through this struggle. Not everyone understands what it takes to function when your mind is constantly generating worst-case scenarios, when simple tasks require enormous mental energy. You've seen every private battle, every moment I chose to keep going when anxiety made me want to give up, every time I pushed through the mental fog to fulfill my responsibilities. This struggle has taught me compassion for others fighting invisible battles, has given me empathy I might not have developed otherwise. Help me to see that my journey with anxiety hasn't been wasted time but preparation for the testimony I'll share when you complete my healing. Show me how to use my experience to help others who are where I've been, to be a voice of hope for those still trapped in anxious thought patterns. I want my healing to be about more than just my own peace. I want it to be a beacon for others seeking freedom from anxious minds. Jesus, I need you to address the perfectionism that often fuels my anxiety, the impossible standards I set for myself that keep my mind in constant turmoil. You know how I replay conversations looking for mistakes, how I lie awake analyzing whether I did enough, said the right thing, met everyone's expectations. This perfectionist drive has turned my mind into a courtroom where I'm always on trial, always found wanting, always sentenced to more worry about how to do better next time. But you didn't call me to be perfect. You called me to be yours, to rest in your perfect love that casts out fear. Help me to embrace grace for myself the way I extend it to others, to accept that making mistakes doesn't make me a mistake. Show me that excellence and perfectionism aren't the same thing, that I can strive to do well without driving myself crazy with impossible standards. Teach me to find my worth in being your child rather than in achieving some unattainable ideal that only exists in my anxious imagination. God, I bring you my desperate desire for this prayer to make a difference, for something to finally click and free me from this prison of anxious thoughts. You see how many times I've prayed for healing, how many approaches I've tried, how weary I am of fighting the same battles in my mind. Sometimes I wonder if you're listening, if you care about my mental struggles as much as you care about bigger issues in the world. But you've shown me that nothing is too small for your attention, that you care about every detail of my life including the state of my thought life. Help me to trust that healing is happening even when I can't see it, that you're working behind the scenes to restore my mind to wholeness. Give me faith to believe that this prayer, this moment of honest vulnerability with you, is part of your healing plan for my life. I want to end this prayer with hope, not because my circumstances have changed, but because I've connected with the one who changes everything. Lord, I want to thank everyone who has prayed along, who has found pieces of their own story in these words. If this prayer has touched your heart, please consider giving it a thumbs up and sharing it with someone who might be fighting their own battle with an anxious mind. Your engagement helps these healing messages reach more people who desperately need to know they're not alone in their struggles. Together, we can create a community of support where anxiety loses its power to isolate and silence us. Remember that healing is a journey, not a destination, and every step toward peace is a victory worth celebrating. Keep seeking, keep praying, keep believing that the God who created your mind can certainly heal it. May His peace guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. May His presence be your constant companion, and may His healing touch transform your anxious thoughts into testimonies of His faithfulness.